Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And of course, for those of you that don't know, Marsh Williams was the CEO of TransAlta in the 60s and 70s, and he started a long history of the company's CEOs being involved in public policy, and is a great man. So good evening, Premier Kenney, Lieutenant Governor Mitchell, and Ed, and all of you here. And to the Lougheed family, I can't see if I read, and I can't read if I see. So to the Lougheed family, your father started the Junior Achievement Awards in Alberta, and I was lucky enough to receive one, I think around in 1974. I was 14. And my mother sewed a dress for me and took me up to Edmonton on the bus, and it was the first time I ever stayed in a hotel. And I walked across the stage and received an award from your father, so it's really quite special for me to be here tonight. I would like to tonight extend my congratulations to Dr. Elizabeth Cannon, especially if there's a woman who I'd like to be mistaken for, it would be you. And we do say to each other when we see each other, we really can't tell you all apart either, so for all the men, you know. And to Stockwell Day, thank you for all your public service. And Dave Mowat, of course, you have to know your father is one of the funnest CEOs. He actually is a fun CEO, unlike the rest of us. So congratulations to all of you. Now, as many of you have pointed out, good public policy solves problems, and it serves justice, and it supports our democracy, and it encourages citizenship. And really, the people on this stage have all been using their requirement to be good citizens to do good public policy. It is important, and it's never easy. And so what I wanted to make some comments on tonight was an area where I think people really in this room don't know, whether you're an Albertan or you're here from somewhere else, because I know there's a lot of people here from Toronto tonight. A lot of people really don't know the work that's been done on climate change and on our greenhouse gas regulations in this country, how far advanced Canada is, how much has been done, and how proud we should be. And I want to talk about that, and I want to give you the story of that, because I think it's an incredibly important Canadian story, and it has to be heard and known. For us in Canada, we have a responsibility to respond to the Paris Accord. It is our commitment to a global treaty that we signed that limits greenhouse gas emissions. And we need to do this in a way that not only achieves outcomes that keep our country growing and competitive, but our environment pristine, which we're all proud of. But we also need to show the country that we can solve this complex problem and forge a successful path. And we need to be able to do this while we keep the rights that we have and our freedoms and our protections as Canadians. So it is an important issue, and we are well down the road on that path. We're not all the way there, though, and I have some suggestions because it is the public policy forum, so I thought I might as well make some public policy recommendations. Now, the regulation of greenhouse gases is complex. It's complex for our province and our country. Our collective targets are not easy to achieve, and it requires action everywhere. And I do believe we as Canadians, between our Constitution, our legislative abilities, our regulatory abilities, and our abilities to work between the province and the federal government, I think we have the tools. It requires careful analysis, and it requires some patience. But what I'm going to tell you tonight is over the past 16 years, Alberta and the federal government have worked on a policy framework that does work, that has made a difference, that does make us leaders, and it is a story that needs to be told. Premier Kenney talked earlier about 2007 as when we started a program of actually charging large emitters for greenhouse gases. That program came out of a commitment that started in 2003 to start the regulation of greenhouse gases. We have been on this journey for 16 years. We have, on our journey, encouraged companies like Shell to build carbon capture and storage. We've made a commitment to close our coal plants down by 2030. We're transitioning our electricity sector to gas and renewables. We have been supporting in Alberta very aggressively the national targets to reduce greenhouse gases and our commitment to the Paris Treaty. If you look at TransAlta alone as a country, since 2005, we have cut our greenhouse gas emissions by 50%. If we were a country, we'd be the #1 country in the world. So although significant action has been taken by our governments, investors do continue to worry that the investments we're making today could be stranded tomorrow. So this means that at TransAlta, the team who works on this file, and really this award is for them. I help be the mouthpiece for a lot of detailed work that our team does. This means that our team has to spend significant time looking even harder at ways that we can continue to improve the policy framework here. For us, contributing to the collective work that is required to build a long-term regulatory regime for the regulation of greenhouse gases is an imperative. And we know that greenhouse gas regulation will outlive every person in this room. It will transverse government after government. And we know that the strong solution, a final solution, and there will be one, must cut across political lines. It must satisfy more than 50.001% of the people. And it has to satisfy the intergenerational values and norms that exist today in our country. But what I'm going to tell you is that we've already made some very significant progress. So let's talk about where we are today and what we've done. Since 2003, when the province of Alberta set a framework for regulating greenhouse gases, a combination of work that was done in 2003, 2007, 2015, and just recently by our Alberta government in 2018, as well as policies that were set federally by various governments, both conservative and liberal, starting in 2007, again in 2012, and again last year in 2018, we have built a framework so that large emitters today in this country pay for the use of the environment, and they have a performance standard which they adhere to. Now, when you look at this program today, it's called, in the Alberta program, is called the Technology Innovation and Emissions Program, TIER, and under the TIER, that was announced earlier this year, we pay $30 for carbon, and we have a performance standard of best gas in the electricity sector. Be clear, the Alberta program is more stringent than the program that was set by the federal government, and it allows our industry to find our way through to investments and to transform our electricity sector so that we can reduce greenhouse gases significantly and keep prices of electricity low for our customers. So it is a workable solution. It's a workable framework. Hopefully, in the next month, we'll find out that that program is accepted by the new federal government. It'd be amazing if it wasn't, because it sits within their framework, and it is much stricter than what their framework says that we'd have to do. And when that happens, and I'm sure that will happen, we will have, over 16 years, created a framework for large emitters in this country that will be stronger, stricter, and more certain for what we need to do for our investors than any program that's been created globally. We need to be proud about that. So, for me, it's not quite enough. There's a little bit more to do. We need to make sure we can hold on to the TIER program in Alberta. It is part of our competitive advantage. It's part of what we need to do to show that we have reconciled the equation between the environment and the economy. We need to hold on to the idea of a performance standard that can stay steady over, let's say, 10 or 20 years. We need to be very careful about how we raise the carbon price. There's no question that if we raise it too quickly, all we do is take money from people. There are no technologies today that raising the price will do very much for us on. So if we take it slowly and we take it over the long period of time, we can actually have the effect of bringing new technologies into being and at the same time, we don't have to tax people for carbon. We also need to develop a Made in Alberta policy that protects people who invest in natural gas in this province. We are a company who invested in a coal plant that we had to shut down 30 years before its time. That really ruined our reputation with our investors. So for us to invest $1.5 billion in gas-fired generation, we need a policy framework that says that those investments will be honored at least until 2050 or 2060, because we invest in long-term infrastructure, and we do those investments for our customers that are in this room and for, of course, all of our families. So there's still work to do, but we've come a long way. We have a stable policy framework. We need to hold on to that framework, and we need to all understand what it is. So with that, I'd like to thank the team at TransAlta. You did all the work. I just talked about it. I'd like to thank the Public Policy Forum for providing these kinds of awards, and thank you all for being here tonight. And with that, I'm between you, somebody saying goodnight, and Netflix, so I'll get off the stage.